So I think that when we look at the prospects for India after the election, it really looks now with the Modi government and BJP in power that India is going to see a revitalization of economic growth momentum. And one of the key positives for India will be the growth of its multinationals, not only within India but also around the whole world. I think for India, one of the major opportunities is in Southeast Asia and more broadly in East Asia, because these are some of the fastest growing consumer markets outside of India. And I think Singapore will play a very important role as a hub for Indian multinationals as they're seeking to create a headquartering hub outside of India, because Singapore has excellent logistics, a very efficient financial sector, and it's also very open for international firms to establish and to do business in Singapore. That's why in the World Bank's rankings of the most easiest places to do business, actually Singapore comes #1. So I think there's a huge synergy there between Singapore and India. And when we look at the outlook for India over the next 20 years or so, where we expect India is going to become one of the biggest economies in the world, then I think Singapore is going to play a very important role in that process. Because multinationals who are expanding in the Southeast Asia region will be able to use Singapore as a platform, partly to establish their regional headquartering, and also to use the logistics of Singapore, which are very strong both for aviation and for shipping as well. And also the clusters of services that have developed in Singapore to support trade and investment flows. So I think when we look at the long-term outlook, and one of the biggest changes that's going to happen in terms of India's relations in the region, then I think Singapore is going to be a key hub for India-ASEAN relations. If you look at ASEAN right now, the 10 member countries of Southeast Asia have a combined GDP of $2.4 trillion US, which is actually bigger than India, and it's growing at about 6% per year. So for Indian multinationals, this really is a very important opportunity to grow in one of the fastest growing consumer markets. And India has many multinationals that should be able to compete very effectively in the frontier markets of ASEAN, such as Vietnam, increasingly Myanmar now is opening up, and other countries like the Philippines, which have in the past been relatively slow growing, are now also starting to become more dynamic. And Singapore is the ideal hub from which to serve these countries.